And the media doesn't cover it. The newspapers and
Yes, they do. They do it,
Oh.
but it's a long, it's a long fight.
Right.
So, for example, as I told you, it's the first time in France. 2 weeks ago, we had a program on the national TV, which has been seen by 3 million people, where we explained exactly
Right.
the problem of uranium mining. But it's very new.
But no newspapers, no print media covering this before that. No, like national newspapers interviewing or coming to
Some
you.
papers, but it's not enough.
Yes, right.
Because those findings we are speaking about this in France for, I would say, 15 years, and problems we find are always the same. So people really have to wake up about the consequences of the whole nuclear stuff, and especially uranium mining, which is probably one of the most polluting step of the whole nuclear cycle, and probably one which is less known by the people. People are afraid of nuclear plants, reprocessing plants, radioactive waste from the nuclear plants, but they are not aware of the problem of radioactive waste from the mine, because the companies and the governments always said that, oh, it's natural uranium, so it's not dangerous, which is completely wrong. Uranium is radioactive and is associated with very radiotoxic other natural elements like radium, radon, polonium. So people have to understand that.
And the waste of the mill tailings, is that radioactive? Does that carry any contaminants in it? The waste itself is radioactive, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
The uranium ore is radioactive.
Right.
And when you get the uranium ore out at the surface, you will generate two types of waste: radioactive rocks from the mines and the radioactive tailings from the uranium mills. The radioactive tailings still get 80% of the initial amount of radiation that was available in the ore, because in the tailings you have no more uranium, but you still have all the uranium daughters, radium, radon, polonium. So it's a substance which has a lot of radioactivity, and that will last very long, because one of the radioactive elements, thorium-230, has a half-life of, let's say, 70,000 years. So it will last very long. And the problem is that the amount of those radioactive tailings is huge. In France, we have to date 50 million tons. In Niger, it's about 35 million tons. I don't know in the United States, but it must be huge. And nobody knows seriously how to confine those radioactive tailings for thousands of years. For example, in France, some of the tailings are just into artificial dams with some water to try to lower the amount of radon gas getting in the atmosphere. But nobody knows who will guarantee that the dam will last for thousands of years. Who will guarantee that we will have always a water coverage of the tailings to lower the amount of radon gas getting in the atmosphere? There are no scientific answers to this question. In other cases in France, tailings have just been pushed into open pits with no confinement. I mean that the finest fraction of the tailings is getting into the aquifer, into the underground water, and is polluting the water. So Areva is obliged to pump the water, to treat it into a plant, and to let it go then to the environment. But we discovered that this water, even after treatment, is still contaminated with uranium and radium, which are heavy metals. And those heavy metals which are in the water will then settle in the plants, in the fauna and flora, and especially in the soil, because when the river that receives those radioactive elements, when the river floods, when there is a flooding, those elements will then settle in the soil of the meadows.
Right.
And we measured even very recently the fact that the level of radiation, even at 1 meter above ground surface, when you are in those meadows, can be as high as 10 times above normal value. And the French state does nothing. Areva is still polluting those meadows, and you have cows in those meadows, and the French state does nothing about that, which is incredible.
So the cows eat from the meadows, they graze there, and then the milk, for example, and cheese and things that are made from the cows, so it goes out into the food supply, the food chain as well. And then people go to market and they buy the cheese, and it comes from an area that possibly is contaminated, correct? I wanted to thank you very much, Bruno, for being a part of this. I know this is a wonderful interview. Thank you for sharing with us your knowledge about what you've experienced in France and Niger. And I'd just like to ask you one last question. What have you learned being a part of this panel discussion in this group in the last
it has been very interesting to meet all those people and to share our experience, to share it with people from Australia, people from New Mexico, Arizona, and our friend from Niger. Because what is interesting is to see that the problems are exactly the same, more or less the same everywhere. I mean, a lack of information from the companies, from the states, a lot of lies and bad information about what really happens. Is the fact that very frequently mines are mined in territories that belong to native people, and it's something which is very bad, especially bad, because those people are not the ones which are benefiting usually from the nuclear electricity, but they are the people that get such troubles, the problems. And it was very powerful to share this experience and to see also the film Poison Wind, which is very, very, very powerful.
Thank you.
And I hope this initiative of Beyond Nuclear will be a step to improve people understanding and awareness about nuclear energy, and especially nuclear uranium mining, which is absolutely not which is absolutely not a clean way of producing energy.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Bruno.
Thank you.
And Dave's going to take a picture with it because